Welcome back to Tabletop Assault. I'm Ross, and today I'm going to be giving you my first impressions, a small review on the Warhammer 40k Apocalypse game. So big thank you to Games Workshop for obviously sending that to us. I'll do a quick unboxing just to explain what you get in the box in itself. I will also sort of give my first impressions slash sort of review of the product in general. I could have gone into a sort of explanation of the rules in sort of more detail. However, Games Workshop themselves put out a really good sort of summary video, which is very handy, which gives you an idea of the game in itself. And I thought that was pretty good, and then there'll be other people covering it. But generally there's quite a lot of minute details through it that if I explain them, I'd be going on for a long time. And secondly, you're probably best to experience them yourself if you do decide to obviously play Apocalypse, the game. So I thought I'd maybe probably summarise it, give you my feels for the game and strengths and weaknesses for it. So first thing first, let's open the box itself. You may have seen this a few times, but it's really nice open on it, and you firstly get your Apocalypse book, which I have read in a bit of detail. You get quite a few markers with it as well, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sheets. Yep. And these are absolutely essential for the game. So if you are going to use them, make sure you do not lose them, because if you lose them, you're not playing Apocalypse. I highly say that. There is obviously a wee leaflet. I think that is just for one of the books, you know, that's upcoming. If you're sort of Imperial Fist fan, and I also see White Scars and Dark Angels. Yeah, some readable stuff in there. You get dice, small amount of dice. You know, 6-sided one. And then obviously your D12s. Now D12s are very important in Apocalypse. Interesting they went for that, but I think it was a smart call. It may be looking like a smaller amount of dice for what you'd perceive is a game that is much bigger scale than 40k, you know, the regular games, but really on first impressions, you don't need much more of that dice. They have tried and made the game design to be a lot smaller, so you're not getting a bajillion dice, which for Orcs players, they may be going, what? I want to throw all the dice in the world. That's kind of my jam, Tyrannids, etc. So you might be a bit disappointed in that one, but you know, I'll go into a bit more explanation to that later, why I think it's kind of a good thing. And then you get a shed load of cards, you know, like 4 packs worth of cards. Now these, I think, cover multiple things, mainly sort of your sort of stratagems. I think they're your command asset cards. You build a deck from them, and basically, I want to say they're kind of like stratagems, but basically you draw up to cards, and they allow you special abilities. So unlike stratagems where you can just go into you spend your command points on certain ones and build your force around it, when you make a deck, you don't have that guarantee. That's caused a lot of controversy in some people's minds with that one. I'll talk about my view on that in a minute. But that's kind of everything you get in the box, and it is essentially everything you need, hopefully with multiple people, to actually play the game straight off the bat. There's additional things you can that will make your life easier, which is the movement trays, which I highly recommend. It'll make your games go a lot quicker by having them, simply because you're going to have a huge amount of models. You can move them all by hand, but having movement trays is very helpful. You can also get the data slates, I think is packs for each of your factions, but I believe they also have actually released most of the details for them online for free, which is a fantastic move. And so you can just get the data sheets for, I think, all your forces just online. And they've got some strange stuff in there, like, is it Colonel Schaefer's? No, it could be Last Chancellor's. Is it Colonel? I might get into trouble for that one, getting his rank wrong. But basically the Last Chancellors are on there. I don't think they've got any models for them, but they're a good sort of old school, you know, unit that you haven't, I mean, I don't think you can even play in 40k general games anymore, but you can play them in Apocalypse. I don't know many other units out there. There's certainly Forge World ones that have not been seen in a while. So it's really cool to have those units available with stats in Apocalypse as well, including Chaos Knights. Certainly some, you know, their updated sort of data slates and their names. So it'll be very interesting to see when they actually come out for 40k. But it's good to see all those data slates online if you need them. And if you want to buy the packs well, just so you have cards, it's a bit easier on that as well. So yeah, that's everything for there. And actually, I'm going to get out the rulebook just so I have a wee bit of a couple of things to refer to. It's going to make my life a little bit easier to speak about the game. So let's speak about the game in itself. Now, when you open up the book, you know, it speaks a lot about the introduction and everything, mighty armies, there's some great sort of photos and everything, and it explains about what is Apocalypse. And it's very interesting how they go into speaking about this section. What I find that's important for this introduction when I was reading it, because I don't usually read the introductions, I just go straight on to them, but they are acutely aware of the problems of Apocalypse in 7th edition. You know, they may not say that themselves, but you know, I had several people, one friend of mine said, I'm not so sold on Apocalypse. The problem with Apocalypse in previous editions, it was essentially a giant version of, you know, 40k with additional rules and bits, but it had the problem of, you know, it lasted forever. You know, if you played, you know, 6,000 points per side, you know, that would last a very, very long time. And it just became quite unwieldy, and sometimes it would drag on a wee bit. And then obviously there's sometimes disorganisation of people, which doesn't help as well. So a couple of people concerned in that one. So you can see from here what the main aim was to one, make Apocalypse a different game. And I feel that was very important, similar to Kill Team. The aim and objective of making it such a different game is that so you can play a giant game of, you know, essentially 40k using all these miniatures, and to quote what they sort of looked at time-wise, you know, they believe you can get a total power level of 300 to 450 done, so 300 to 450 in about 3 hours is what they say. Now, I've never played an Apocalypse game that's, you know, been under a weekend essentially. The problem with Apocalypse in the past is that you could play up to 3 turns, and that could, quite frankly, take 2 days. You know, it'd be very, very, you know, take a long time depending on the efficiency of people. They even say a power level of 900 can take 6 hours. That is their estimate. How true that is, we'll see. But I believe, you know, roughly 2,000 points, or 1,750 points is roughly about 150 power level, give or take. It may be different power levels, obviously, with a different game. So if you said, you know, 1,750 points, that's 3,500 points they're going to estimate you can play in 3 hours, which is an interesting promise, and at 900 points, even longer. So it's an interesting one that they've developed a game system that they say is going to reduce time. And I think that is highly possible with the way they have designed the game, and I think that's an achievement in itself. In many ways, I am very pleased with it. Secondly, they also wanted to reduce downtime. So in 7th edition, the problem was, you know, whoever got first turn, they're going to have to move a lot of models and then decide a strategy, stratagem, blah, 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 etc. You know, because I think towards the end of Apocalypse, you had like essentially stratagem cards, you know, which didn't appear in 40k, and there were some really effective ones. So you had to decide that if you got turn 1. So it could be 3v3, and you don't get first turn. Cool, I will see you guys in an hour and a half as you try and get your stuff sorted, you decide what to do, etc. And then you'd be like, cool, we're just going to be doing saving throws, blah, 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 blah. So how they've sort of sorted that is, you know, is that during your turn you roll for initiative, then you have the order phase. And as far as I can see in the order phase, is that each player places down their markers. Now, I believe, you know, I don't think you do it turn person by person. You can put down the orders. Everyone can decide their orders at the same time. You put them down face down, and you know, you basically put them out so people can see, so that they're, you know, choose one sign to be issued. Yeah. So you can put down your orders and everything and decide what you're going to do there. Could be wrong in that one, but that's the way I'm going to say it works. Similar to, now we've played in the past, there's a couple other games that have done it. I think Game of Thrones, we played that. Very, very similar and very, very effective when you obviously place down your orders. So very nice to have that. We can all do our section at the same time. You then sort of, you know, show your orders and everything as well, and you do the action phase. And to reduce time of going, right, you're going to do your entire movement, shooting, charge, fight phase, then it's going to be our turn. is that you do alternating detachments. That's a very good system as well to reduce time, because then everyone has an action. Everyone's doing something at some point, provided you are working as a good team. So both sides get to do something. Very, very efficient on that side as well. And the last thing they do to sort of help with efficiency is that damage is worked out at the end of the phase, which is a very unusual way, and I didn't understand how that was going to entirely work until I actually sort of read how the damage system works, and I quite like it. It's a little bit, you know, a bit of a weird one, very, very different to 40k, but I think it does work a lot. So all these systems, and I'll maybe go into a little bit of detail in a minute, helps to improve, you know, one, time, because you can do things at the same time as your opponents. Two, it means that you're not going to be sitting back and wait for your opponents to do loads of stuff. You know, you are going to have alternating detachment sort of activity, so the forces are constantly having to be aware of stuff that's going on. You know, in the previous ones you could literally sit down for about an hour, hour and a half, and then go, right, cool, what have you done, summarize it for me, or look at the field. It does mean you have to pay attention, engaged, and you will be doing something. So that's quite nice to have, and I feel that's an achievement in itself, that they've managed to keep engagement going through, and hopefully with the rules that they have, make the games go a lot quicker. So that's quite good on that one. Now, in terms of, you know, issuing orders, everything, you know, what they've done with that is use a marker system. So you've got 3 markers. I'll just do them from the book itself rather than show them. Is that you've got your 3 markers there to issue orders. You have advanced, which is your sort of general one. It allows you to do a move action. Then it can either make a shoot action and a fight action. So that's your general one. You've got aimed fire, which means you can't move, but you can make either one shot or one fight action. If you do that, you get +1 to hit when shooting, but -1 to hit if you are going to be doing a fight move, a fight action. So it's not so ideal. It's like you're going to aim with your ranged weapons, but if you are going to be hit rolls for attacks with melee weapons, you're not going to be so good. And then assault is basically double your move. You're going for charge. So it's really nice to have these sort of order actions, and there is sort of, you know, much more minute detail rules to this. Why I think this works is that in Apocalypse, with, you know, the alternating activation, I think there is no way to do it other than with markers. And I did say a few months ago, I think it may have been to David, is that I think marker system for kill team I really liked, because if you did a kill team where one force went entirely first, I think it would be overwhelming. You do find that problem sometimes in 8th edition, where whoever gets first turn can annihilate their opponent quite effectively, and some units, like big units, they just don't get to go. They don't, you know, some games can be decided turn 1. Having this alternating detachment stuff and also damage all being worked out at the end allows, you know, every unit to possibly get a bit of an action, but also it means that things might not be destroyed turn 1. There's still a possibility, but it doesn't. And the marker system keeps it quite organised. Also, really having only 3 actions, as it were, is quite good. Then there's a bunch of special rules on that one as well. Important things to remember, oh boy, yep, you know, making attacks, you know, is a little bit messy. I would try and explain that, but you need to read it and then get into your mind. I think it's one I wouldn't do justice explaining. Same with the damage system as well. Again, the advantage is that you're not rolling huge amounts of dice. It's actually very, very limited. So a lot of the idea on how the actual mechanics work in themselves is pretty good. The turn is explained over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 pages, and then you've got extra things like terrain, but they give you an example turn, which is fantastic. It really does help summarise it. A couple of things to mention as well is that David asked me, how do you work out, you know, points? How do you work out? All done by power level, and I think that really does. If you tried to do 8th edition points, you'd be at this for ages. It'd be impossible. It'd be difficult. Trying to make a point system of like 6,000 points is going to be a pain in anything. So the power level does summarise it quite a wee bit as well. Command assets. So the controversy on that one is people going, a game like 40k should be about you making strategies beforehand, using stratagems, and know how your force is going to use them to efficiency, rather than having, you know, I think terms RNG, you know, random number game, random cards. I think you have a deck of 30, and you could pull 10 cards, and they're going to be absolutely pointless for you turn 1. part of me really likes it and part of me doesn't. I like games with a chance. I mean, it's a dice roll game. So having a deck of stratagems as where to sort of decide how your game's going to work, I actually quite like. It does also mean that people can't just bank a strategy and plan to annihilate you turn one. They may draw their cards and they get their strategy and they're like, great. They might draw cards and go, oh no, this is terrible. Or they're going to go, right, how am I going to use these strategies, these sort of command assets, the best use I can this turn. I believe you can only have 10 in your hand at a time, otherwise you need to discard. And more characters do allow you to draw more cards. I won't really, there's special abilities to go into it. And again, I'd highly encourage you to go into that one. But when it comes to the command assets, to give my view, I think it's a strong idea. I think it just means that people can't just bank up these cards and go, here's my 10 cards, turn one, annihilate you. It creates a bit of randomness, which, dice does as well. And I quite like that. I don't like having strategies that are going to annihilate turn one, and I think that randomness does make a bit of danger. That's quite cool. Many people I know so far have gone, nope, don't like it. We'll have to see when it comes to actually playing through it. And then the damage system is all done by markers. I don't think there's an AP system as such. There might be special abilities that reduce sort of armor saves, etc. Another strong point is the missions. Now, absolutely, I love how the missions work. In fact, let's go into detachments first. Detachments work very much like how 40k ones do. You've got your core detachments, which is like you've got your battalion, you've got your spearhead, you've got your outrider. So battalion only works, you only need 3 troops to work it. You don't need any HQs, though highly advisable you do. Spearhead, you need 3 heavy supports. Outrider, 3 fast. Vanguard, 3 elite. Super heavy detachments, 3 to 5 Lord of Wars. Then you have special detachments will work as well. The advantage of detachments are a couple of things. You have mainly all of them get command benefits, which is essentially your legion traits, etc. So all forces have a bit of a legion trait. To give you an example, Heretic Astartes, which covers all Heretic Astartes, there's no Death Guard one, there's no Thousand Suns, is that reroll wound rolls of 1 for attacks made by Heretic Astartes units in this detachment. That's really good, reroll wound rolls of 1. I believe the wound rolls are done on your D12, so it's less chance you're going to roll a 1, but having that reroll is very, very powerful, and you're not rolling loads of dice, you are rolling limited ones. I believe you're not going to roll many more than 4, 5, 6 dice to wound. I think a unit of 30 orcs only rolled about 4 or 6 attacks, for 30 orcs, and that's considered a lot of attacks, but it can do a lot of damage. So that reroll 1 is good, but I wouldn't say right now, because you're not rolling loads of dice, is overpowered. And then there's a whole bunch of other ones, and they should know no fear. Reroll failed morale test when Adeptus Astartes is actually really good to have there as well. Plenty of interesting ones on that. So yeah, quite like that you take these core detachments, you're not getting command point benefits, so command point spam is, your detachments don't really matter in terms of getting the, your cards. It doesn't really help in that one. There might be other rules I've missed that it does, but it's mainly about the organization of your detachment and what they want to do. And this is probably the most important part to mention when it comes to detachments, is that you're always going to want an HQ. When it comes to detachment, you always choose a commander in that unit that is basically leading that detachment. If you have a unit that is over 12 inches away from that commander at the beginning of the turn, they are out of command range, and if, I could be wrong with this, if they suffer a point of damage and they're out of command range, that 12-inch bubble, unless they're infiltrators, they can fundamentally be removed. Like, you could have a big unit of like Mega Knobs or Terminators and they deep strike in, but they're out of command range, you are going to lose that unit quite easily. They are going to run quite easily, I believe is the way it works. I could be wrong. So when you're moving a detachment, they've got to unify as a collective bubble around this leader, keeping them all in check. So if you're going to go with, elite, you're going to go with a vanguard unit, you want to make sure they all have similar movement, they can all move as a unified force, and they're going to take the right hand flank. With commander, probably an HQ, you don't need to take an HQ, but I highly advise you do, who is an infantry, same as them. Going to go with a fast attack unit of bikers, you're going to want your HQ either with a jump pack or with a bike in themselves going along with them. You basically want to make sure that the commander of that one is strong, because you can make a unit a commander, but they might get killed, or again, if you go with, so for instance, you go with a fast attack unit, but you've got one unit very slow, one unit very fast, the commander's trying to keep them both in check, it's just not going to happen. So you want to make sure that your spearhead detachment, which is your heavies, are all back rankers with the commander keeping them in check. Very, very important. You know what? I can totally dig that. Is this idea that, you know, you've got a detachment and they're not all spread out. They've got to keep to a section, they're commander of that flank. You've got your central flank and they've got commander controlling that one. I quite like that. How it works out in gameplay, I don't know. You know, usually in like 7th edition, you just go freaking nuts, they all go everywhere. You've got a detachment and it's going to be in control of this section. I like that. Many people might be annoyed that they've got to check, oh, is this within range of here? And there is ways that you get a bit of a warning, you work out at the beginning, but if they move back into range, then you're okay. You're fine. But it can limit, or you could just go pelting down one edge and try and hurt your opponent as much as you can, but you're going to be out of command range and vulnerable. So I like this idea, and I think it helps stop the game getting pretty messy, but it can lead you being very vulnerable. I like it. But also, it means that your detachments is mainly about how you want that detachment to work, rather than trying to abuse card points. You get cards mainly through having HQs. HQs is your commander of detachment. I think you draw an extra card. So when it comes to detachments, I really like that. I like this sort of controlled area. You know, you've got 3 players, you're like, cool, I'm going to have this detachment, my vanguard, my spearhead detachment in this flank, they're going to take the center, while my outrider detachment is going to take left-hand flank. If you want to take two battalion detachments as the center, I mean, they're troops, so you maybe don't want them as controlling your center, cool, go for it. And then the third player is going to have their detachments in this section. I like that. I think it's really cool, and I think if we do end up filming it, it's going to look really, really awesome. You also have common abilities now. Universal special rules, they're kind of back, but I think that's just a page that sort of, I think the rules are on the data sheets, but it's a handy referral sheet to say, you know, things like supercharge, supersonic, deep strike, you know, of course it's a universal common ability. Yeah, there's a handy wee bit on that one as well. You've also got your faction abilities to go into as well, which I'm so glad they put in. It really adds a bit more there. Warlord trait is a D12, or I think you can just choose. Basically, I think each commander, which is, you know, each player has one main character, which will be your War Master, and they get a Warlord trait. And some are quite good. I've not actually read many of them myself, but very nice to have. Multiplayer games, which is good. But the missions, now I really think they're actually quite good. You have a few sort of Race to Destruction, your standard ones. Night March, which is crazy. Look at that deployment. You know, I think that's going to be really, really difficult. You've also got Pincer Attack, you know, really good options in that one as well. And I think that's quite good, Meat Grinder. But an interesting one they've got is Mission Generator. So I'll go into this a wee bit. You've got your different deployments and Mission Generator. And you've basically got a D12 to generate objectives. You have a D12 twist table, which adds a twist to the game, which I think is quite good. You also have a ruse table, which is, I think, for the defender, they get an extra bonus to their army. And then sudden death, if you want to be really tricky. And the defender, basically, if they've got half the amount of power level, so say, you know, one force has 300 power level and the other force has 600, you can have a sudden death sort of objective that can be generated. So you can generate missions that have very different rules to them quite easily, and I think for Apocalypse games, that's great. You could generate, both sides pick up their force, decide how they're going to play. You go, right, we're going to play equal levels and we're going to generate the battle, or we're going to go with a sudden death one with you guys getting more forces, we get less. And then, don't know what the ability might be, sudden death, it might be almost impossible for you to achieve, might be really simple, but the fact is you don't know. And I like that idea. I like this customization of missions. One of the weaknesses I find for Kill Team is it's a little bit specific with its missions, especially with terrain, etc. Apocalypse, they've been a lot more open with it and giving you plenty of options and ideas on it. Whether they work, I don't know. It's going to be playtesting and find out. But I think that's a big strength in that one. And then you have war zones. Now war zones are essentially similar to the idea of Kill Team, where basically, you know, your war zones have different, you know, different effects on the battle, which can be very, very handy. Death World Forest, Sector Mechanicus, etc, etc, Wall of Martyrs. You know, this idea that the battlefield that you do play on does have a specific effect. So yeah, I mean, I don't know how much more I want to go into detail on it. All I can say is that with the box itself, it should, in theory, give you enough for you and your friends to play. You know, one box should do everyone, though it does mean you only have one book. But you do have the dice and you do have the cards to play with. You can get the rules for your guys, you know, for your forces online, and then print them off, and then cool, job's good. The ways you might want to be easier is that deck of cards, there's going to be command assets everyone wants. There's definitely 100% going to be command assets everyone wants, no question about it. And they do have a solution for generating cards if you are sharing a deck. I can't remember what it is off the top of my head, and part of me says that the best way to get the most cleanest game is have your own deck of cards, which is an additional cost. Equally, you know, you might want to buy your set of cards for your force. It's easier, cleaner, fair enough as well. But the command asset cards, though you have everything that you have to get going with Apocalypse, command asset cards, to make sure you get the best command asset cards, is going to be, you know, one thing I'd maybe say you're going to have to buy in itself. So what's my final thoughts on Apocalypse? Now, I really do like it. You know, compared to other guys on the channel, I am more sold on it than the others. Simply as sheer fact that it had an objective of making a game that is recognising the strengths and weaknesses of its past, which was, it took a huge amount of time to almost sometimes get nowhere. The amount of games I played of Apocalypse that, you know, we got to turn 3 in sometimes a weekend and we're like, right, cool, we'll call it who did the most damage, you know. This has been an aim of, we want to achieve this in a set amount of time. And I won't be able to say definitively if they have until I get a few games on, but I think that they have made a game where that's possible. Secondly, they've made it so that it's easy to set up with power levels, which is quite good. And they have given you suggested table size. They have made it so that hopefully you're always engaged. You know, you're not just having one player, you know, one side that goes, we got turn 1, see if in a while. It should be one where you're always engaged, you're coming up with strategies, you're worried about what your opponent's going to do turn 1, you don't know what stratagems they're going to do. You know, certainly if you play other forces in 8th edition, you go, oh, well, I know they're going to play that stratagem. You know, he's got, you know, a unit of like 4 or plus Castellan robots with the guns. You can bet that they're going to fire all their shots, Wrath of Mars, blah, blah, blah. You don't know, because you don't know what's in their hand or what their deck's consisting of. So I quite like that element of difference as well. You know, you simply don't know what your opponent's maybe planned in their deck or what they've even drawn. So it's quite good on that one. But simply put, there is no way, I believe, 8th edition, you know, the game as it's set, would transition to Apocalypse level, where they tried to do that in 7th edition. They had to make a new game. It would have, you know, games of 40k already take a long time in itself. If you just built up the points and say that's Apocalypse, it would just take forever and the problems we've had in the past would just happen. I think this new game is hopefully cleaner, more time efficient, and more effective, and hopefully quite enjoyable. I would have to actually play it. I've not had a chance yet. I mean, essentially for us to play it, we need to put 2 tables together, and they recommend that. I think if you're above 450 power level, essentially it's 2 tables that we play on. And, you know, I'd have to sort out the backing boards. It's usually me that sorts them out, and I'm probably going to say I'm not going to sort out backing boards for Apocalypse, or it's going to take me some time, because that sounds like a nightmare. It's already a nightmare to get the backing boards together as it is. But I definitely want to play the game, but we need to find a space to fit the 2 tables on together, which will work out at some point. But I think it is you know, they've made their objectives have been made. Easier game for people to get the box, get your forces, and get your sheets online, and you should be good to go. And I think that is good. And you should hopefully, in theory, get a game done in a day. which I've never done in Apocalypse. I've never achieved one in a weekend. So I hope that works. And I think I'm going to end. I could ramble on for a wee bit longer, but basically I'm going to say on first impressions, I think they've achieved it. Whether they have or not, time will tell as people play games, give feedback, and we'll see how it goes. That's simple as it is. I'm looking forward to playing a game. Don't know when it'll happen, when we'll film one, but I really hope it is soon because I enjoy Apocalypse. I enjoy playing big number games, and I think it's going to be a really cool battle report when we get it on. Let us know what forces you want us to see. Certainly we've got a number of forces, so let us know which ones you would like to see, and we'll get them together, and hopefully, you know, all of us and maybe some guests will come on and absolutely tear each other apart. Should be really, really fun. So thanks again for watching. Please comment, share, like and subscribe. Super excited to hear what people think of this version of Apocalypse. Maybe you don't know what it is yet, because obviously you need to wait for battle reports and then obviously to get your hands on it itself. But are you apprehensive? I know many people who are apprehensive, but for me, and I mean that includes some people on the channel, they're like, you know, Apocalypse in the past has been quite difficult. Me reading the book here, I am hopeful, and I think it's going to be a really effective game to play. So yeah, comment, let us know what you think. Send us photos of your forces, you know, ready for bringing huge amounts of destruction to your opponent. I'm super excited to hear what you think. So thanks again, and we'll see you on our Tabletop Assault Battle Report.